that's sea lights. Oh no, that's just street lights.
Okay, that's a bit scary.
Yeah,
That's a bit scary.
that is very scary.
Well, starting off at number 10, the Shanghai tunnels in Portland, Oregon. Portland was one of the most dangerous ports in the United States during the early 19th century, and it was the epicenter of Shanhang, a form of human trafficking. It's crazy to think human trafficking still happens today, and tunnels are still the way to do it. According to the local lore, swindlers preyed upon unsuspected men in the local salons, which were often outfitted with trap doors that deposited the victims directly into a network of underground tunnels. These men were supposedly held captive, drugged, and eventually transported to the waterfront, where they were sold to ships as unpaid laborers, aka slaves. Some worked for several years before finding their way back home. The tunnels are said to be haunted by the aggrieved spirits of the captives who died in the dark recesses behind the city. Random facts: the practice of kidnapping men to work on ships came to be known as Shanghing because the ships that were sold to were often headed to East Asia.
Coming in number 9, we have Clark Air Base Hospital, Pampanga. Let's jump from one war story right into another. This airbase hospital was mostly used by American soldiers during the Second World War. As you can imagine, it wasn't a very jolly place to go visit back then. Most of the people who were taken to this hospital were either injured in combat or suffering from some terrible sickness that occurred while they were in the Filipino jungles. That's the problem with waging war on unfamiliar grounds. You can get attacked by things you never expected. There's a lot of troops who died in agony in this hospital, and as you can imagine, a death in suffering brings with it a lot of ghosts. Shadow figures have been seen walking through the halls, and it's very normal to hear the sounds of someone weeping when no one else is around.
So next up, number 8, we have House of the Seven Gables, Salem, Massachusetts. Now, this house did not steal its name from the classic novel. In fact, it inspired the novel itself. Salem is known for its history of the famous witch trials, and that's where Sabrina Spellman lived, but it happens to be the birthplace of Nathaniel Hawthorne, who used this 17th century house as inspiration for his famous 1851 novel, The House of the Seven Gables. Aside from its beautiful yet spooky facade, the house is surrounded by paranormal activity and ghost sightings, all based on personal experiences of staff. Every October, the house offers spooky tours as well as weekly performances of 2 plays. The Legacy of the Hanging Judge and Spirit of the Gables. Would you guys see a play in a haunted town's haunted house?
Filling at number 7 slot is The Shadow. Now this one comes from Cotton Candy Sweet and Low, who was sure that he had a ghost living in his lost house. There were just too many things that took place that couldn't be explained. Full coffee cans would be flung across the kitchen. His mum woke up in the middle of the night because she felt something pulling and pinching her legs. One night the user woke up because some force kept shaking his bed, and then he started hysterically crying till it stopped. But the worst thing he described took place one night at 3 AM. He was downstairs and he saw a shadow on the wall, assuming it was his mum, but when he turned around, no one was there. Then all of a sudden he felt this intense choking feeling and the lights started flickering before going off completely. Meanwhile, this guy is getting choked by something and cannot breathe. When the entity finally let him go, he ran to his mum's room and cried under the blankets all night. I would do the same. Honestly, I would do the same.
At number 6, we have La Château de Brisac, France. We are heading all over the world with this list, and now we're heading to a place that has a long, rich history, France. It makes sense to waltz right into a castle. Besides being one of the most glorious buildings in all of France, an exciting reason to visit this place is the spectral tourist attraction. Back during the reign of King Charles VII, he was married to a beautiful woman who he unfortunately found out was cheating on him. He wasn't too happy with this, so he divorced her, and that was that. I'm just kidding. It was the 1400s. He also had her killed for insulting his honor. That's how they did things back then. When her life ended, she was wearing a green dress. Now it's said you can see the ghost of a woman in a green dress walking the halls, moaning for her lost love.
Over halfway on this list, number 5, we got RMS Queen Mary in Long Beach, California. This retired ocean liner sailed the Atlantic Ocean from 1936 to 1967. During the first 3 years at sea, the Queen Mary carried Hollywood celebrities like Elizabeth Taylor. Her days as a luxurious ship were short-lived. In 1939, she was stripped of her amenities and began her second life as a Grey Ghost, a World War II troop ship. At the conclusion of the war, she was restored to her former glory and traversed the Atlantic for nearly 2 more decades. On Halloween 1967, the Queen Mary departed on her last cruise, eventually docking in Long Beach, California, her final resting place. The ship is reportedly haunted by the spirits of those who died aboard, such as the young sailor who was crushed to death by a door in the engine room and a crew member who was murdered in cabin B340.
Filling at number 3 slot is the College Nightmare Part 1. So this one's from Munchies on Reddit, who said he lived in a haunted house with his friends while he was in college. He had so many stories to share, but I tried picking the best ones. One night he woke up at 3 AM fuming because his roommate's door kept opening and slamming shut. He shouted from his bed telling his roommate to stop before realizing he was the only person in the house that weekend. But as soon as he finished yelling, the doors stopped moving as well. Instead, the hippie beads hanging on his own door started swaying violently against his door for an hour before stopping. He also shared that anytime anything strange happened around the house, it would start smelling like this strong, flowery old lady sort of perfume. So I'm guessing the entity haunting them was an old woman from the days of yore. What does that even mean? The days of yore. I don't know, I heard it. I used it. Now at number 2 is the College Nightmare Part 2. Now another really odd thing with this college house was the fact that it had a door built into the floor that led to the basement, but it was always hidden by a carpet, so no one else other than the tenants knew it was there. However, things in the house would continuously go missing and wind up in the basement in the coal chute down there. On another occasion, one of the roommates was playing video games at night when he saw a visible cloud of mist travel from the kitchen into the bathroom, then disappear into the basement door. Another night, the last roommate up was locking the doors and closing the lights before going to bed. As he was walking, he heard someone breathe into his ear, and initially he thought it was one of the roommates, but they were all asleep. He turned around, saw no one there, himself, and then ran to his room. And finally, at number 1 is the previous owner. This one comes from the Toenail Collector on Reddit, and I honestly hope you do not collect your toenails. I'm gagging. Either way, he shared that as a teen he lived in an old farmhouse that his family were remodeling. One day he was working under his truck while only being supported by a jack, which I feel like is pretty dumb. Either way, midway he really had no reason to get out from underneath, but all of a sudden he felt this overwhelming urge to get out. So he did, and less than 2 seconds later the jack slipped and the truck fell to the ground. Now had he been under there, he would have straight up died. So he ended up telling his parents about it later on that day, and his mum started sobbing, saying the previous owner had died under a vehicle in the exact same spot. The family would also see moving shadows around the house and music coming from upstairs despite no one playing it. One morning his mum was making breakfast and she went to get something from a cabinet, and when she turned around all the forks were stabbed into the table and then bent like right angles. Like, I don't know what's going on there. We're just gonna sweep it under the rug. Okay, I guess so.
Coming in number 10, we have La Perle House. Let's kick this off like we're in a Resident Evil game and head over to a haunted mansion. Here's a good question for all of you in the comments. Would you spend a night in a haunted mansion if that meant you could keep it? I think that would be a hard no for me, because what am I going to do with a haunted mansion after I own it? I don't want to stay in it, and I definitely don't think anyone is going to buy it. Well, La Perle House is one of the most famous haunted mansions in the world, and it got its ghostly reputation for a good reason. During the Pacific War, the Japanese soldiers came through and needed a place to house some of their troops. They started to take any large building and use it as a garrison, and the La Perle House was one of the most infamous, because when another country's troops come through and then you house them, they would be really grateful for you doing such a thing, and they would treat the residents with respect. No, that doesn't happen at all. The La Perle House was a site of a ton of horrible tortures. It said that the wailing of someone being tortured to death can still be heard from the ghosts that walk the halls. And there has also been several executions that took place at this mansion. So if you want to see the head of a ghost rolling down some stairs, this would be the best place to find it.
At number 9, Himuro Mansion. The grisly murders just located outside of Tokyo. Himuro Mansion is believed to be one of the airiest places in Japan. This mansion have witnessed some of the most bizarre activities like cult practices and gruesome murders. According to the local lore, the family in this mansion practiced practiced the strangling ritual, which is called Shinto, and this is to seal off bad karma on Earth every 50 years. But the ritual got tainted as a lover once saved his maiden from being sacrificed. After this, the master killed everyone in the family and then took his own life. The ghost of the family member still lingers in the mansion and tries to attract people so as to complete the taintful ritual. Since then, numerous have emerged of odd occurrences happening in and around the house. Blood splatters appear on the walls. Photographs taken of particular window reveals the image of a ghostly girl, and perhaps most disturbingly, the dead bodies of which would be explorers, well, they have allegedly been found on the property with rope marks around their wrists. And I'm not sure how much I believe these reports, but even so, not a happy place, the Himuro Mansion, and here's an even crazier plot twist of the story. Many people question if the house even exists. In 2002, Temco released a survival horror video game called Fatal Frame, which was for the PlayStation 2 in the US. Players controlled a young woman named Miku Hinaski, where she searched the haunted mansion for her missing brother Mafuyu. The mansion, of course, was the Himuro Mansion, and according to the game's opening screen, it was based on a true story. Up next, number 8, Round Schoolhouse, which is a creepy building. Scary apparitions, noisy ghosts, floating lights, irregular shapes, abandoned vehicles, every paranormal activity in the book have been rumored to have happened at the Round Schoolhouse in Hokkaido. The school was built in a distinctive round shape in 1906 and run like an elementary school. However, it shut down in the 1970s, and since then it's been abandoned. Soon after, these stories of paranormal sightings started coming in, and several paranormal enthusiasts made a beeline to check out these stories. Many of them came back with troubling stories of things they saw and heard, and it is said that a few of them returned raving mad and talked incoherently. Perhaps the first report of paranormal activity at the school was an instance of a little girl who was spirited away right in front of her classmates. According to the legend, searches for the missing girl turned up nothing from the police. After the closure, more rumors spread.
At number 7, we have the Shanghai Tunnels in Portland, USA. A Shanghai tunnel sounds like a place where you go to bet on horse racing and eat the best fried rice you've ever had in your life. But it actually used to be the epicenter for human trafficking in the United States. Located in Portland, Oregon, the tunnels are now run down and unused. Back in the 19th century, people walking through these tunnels would often be kidnapped and then sold overseas into slave labor. Some bars above these tunnels had trap doors in them, which they would use to take drunk people, slip them down into the tunnels where they would never be seen again. A lot of people died in these tunnels before they were sold off into slavery. Now it's said that their angry ghosts walk the halls. Screaming, banging, and even weeping can be heard when you pass through these tunnels.
Now at number 6 is The Maid. This one comes from Reddit user Twig Snapper, whose uncle's house is located in very East New York. It was supposedly haunted because the family that owned it in the 1800s refused to give it to their stableman and decided to sell it instead. Sad and disappointed, the stableman's spirit stayed at the house, as did the maid's. Now the family used to hear furniture being moved around at night, but just chalked it up to how old the house was. Naive. Simply naive. However, one weekend the uncle had a friend and her sister stay over, and waking up from mid-sleep that night, the friend saw the maid bringing towels down the stairs. Now she never saw her go back up, but a few minutes later she saw the maid bring a percolator downstairs as well. Not thinking much of it, and if anything impressed by the hired staff, she went back to sleep. When she woke up and went downstairs, she asked the uncle where the maid went, and the uncle was like, "What? I don't have a maid." He then asked her what she looked like and then took her to an old portrait in the living room which was of the maid. The friend then said that was the woman she saw, and he replied saying she had been dead for over a century. But the grind never ends, does it? Coming in at number 5 is The Cat Hater. You already know I have beef with this one. As a cat lady, this one is just simply not on. Now this one was shared by Reddit user MT Swagger, who said there was some sort of entity in his house that either hated his cats or just liked to tease them. He recalled watching one of his cats walking through the dining area, but then all of a sudden her tail went straight and she was sliding backwards like she was being pulled. The cat was freaking out and meowing and actively trying to run, but she couldn't move. The entity held on for a few more seconds before letting the cat go. You cannot grab an animal by its tail and pull it. It hurts them. You guys, it hurts them. I may not be able to see this ghost entity, but I will call the police on them. I don't even care. At number 4 is the door that never closed. So this one was shared by Redditor iCountFish, who said he used to house sit his boss's house whenever he was out of the country. Now this house was a massive, I'm talking 6 bedrooms, 4 bathrooms, the whole 9 yards. The user kind of exclusively lived on the first floor, but a month in he started hearing bumps and bangs coming from the second floor. He'd go up to check but would never really find anything, and the thing about the second floor was that there were a lot of unfinished areas, one of which was a walk-in closet that was attached to the unlit garage attic. I didn't know you could have a garage in the attic. Either way, one day he went inside to investigate and then locked the door as he left. 2 nights later he heard more noises and went up to check to find the door open. Not just unlocked, but open. And this continued to happen. The door would not stay shut or locked no matter what. At one point he even locked it and pushed a bed up against it to find the door unlocked yet again, and the bed moved. Like, I knew ghosts could move smaller things, but a bed? Damn. Zam, Zaddy.
Finally, down to number 3 on this list, we have Crescent Hotel, Erica Springs, Arkansas. Since its construction in 1886, the Crescent Hotel has served several purposes: luxury resorts, conservatory for young women, junior college. But the strangest mark on its history came in 1937 when it got a new owner, Norman G. Baker. Baker was a millionaire inventor who decided to pose as a doctor despite having no medical training, and turned the hotel into a hospital that can cure cancer. Well, he was eventually found out and he was ran out of town, although reports say that his spirits found its way back to the site and found some otherworldly company too. The now operating Crescent Hotel is said to be haunted by at least 8 ghosts, ranging from a 5-year-old girl to a bearded man wearing Victorian clothing. 1 ghost is enough for me, never mind 8 of them, and children ghosts, I think those were the absolute scariest kind. Number 2 on this list, Heaven's Gate mass suicide site in Rancho, Santa Fe. I mean, when you have the word suicide site, yeah, no thanks, not for this brown guy. The golf course strewn San Diego suburb of Rancho, Santa Fe regularly makes the most expensive zip codes in the USA. So it came a stunner in 1997 when the world learned it was the home to Heaven's Gate, a cult whose 39 members drank poisoned Kool-Aid as the Hale-Bopp comet passed Earth, believing that aliens behind the comet would rupture their souls to heaven. Yeah, really weird. I'm not making this stuff up. Their bodies were found dressing in black sweatshirts and sweatpants, Nike sneakers, faces covered with purple cloth, and carrying $5.75 in one pocket. A toll of people speculated to catch a ride on the comet. And number 1, we have Trans-Allegheny Lunatic Asylum, Western West Virginia. This foreboding asylum began construction in 1858 and opened to patients in 1864. The massive structure was designed by architect Richard Andrews to maximize sunlight and fresh air. It was believed that the building itself would serve as a healing environment. It was designed for 250 people housed and 2,400 patients in crowded conditions. I mean, that's a pretty big range, going from 250 to 2,400. Patients were physically restrained and often given inhumane treatments such as the electroshock therapy and lobotomies, which was very popular back in the day. After more than a century in operation, the facility was forced to close in 1994, which, when you think about it, wasn't too long ago, within the last 30 years. And it was due to the reforms in mental health and treatment and the deterioration of the building. Hundreds of patients died during the asylum tenure, and scores of guests and ghost hunters have claimed they're seeing shadowy figures roaming around the facility. Coming in number 10, we have the Hiroshima Haunted Peace Memorial. No one has ever forgotten the Hiroshima and Nagasaki incident in which the atomic bomb destroyed the lives of around 140,000 people. The attack took place at the Hiroshima Professional Industrial Promotion Hall, which is now changed to the Hiroshima Peace Memorial. Now, 75 years later, the survivors of the faithful and historic day are old, and their stories are fading through the sands of time. The memorial, which is a popular attraction to pay respects and learn about, the devastation that the atomic bomb caused, which is absolutely insane that something like that actually took place. Well, it caused the place to be extremely eerie. The place has been claimed to be haunted as the people nearby have heard uncanny videos near the dome. Not only this, but there have been numerous incidents of electronic voice phenomenon where you can actually hear the atomic bomb exploding itself.
At number 9 we have the Fairmont Hotel in Banff, Canada. If you have never been to Banff, it is one of the most beautiful places in the whole world. There's amazing skiing in the winter, and in the summer it turns into a lush green wonderland. If you were a ghost, this would be a paradise to haunt. The Fairmont sits on top of a mountain that looks so regal it could double as the Grand Budapest Hotel. It was built in 1888 and it was the center point to increase tourism in the area, and it worked. But like any old building, this place has adopted some guests that refuse to check out. There are 2 ghosts that are responsible for the majority of the ghost sightings, one being that of an old bellhop. He was the employee of the hotel back in the 70s, and after he kicked the bucket, he decided that retirement wasn't for him. His ghost has been seen throughout the hotel, helping people to this day. Very few people get to do what they love. Why let a little thing like death stop you from sticking to your passion? Another ghost is that of the bride dressed all in white. The story goes that she tripped down a staircase on the day of her wedding and met a grim ending. That is a huge bummer. You're about to make it to the altar and you lose your footing. Oh, that sucks. At number 8 we have the Chinoi Church in Beijing, China. An old mysterious building that sits in Beijing, China. There are several elements to this building that make it an intriguing place for anyone interested in the supernatural. First, no one knows who built the building or who commissioned the building to be built, almost as if an outside force created the building, like the devil came to town and was like, yeah, let's build a church. Also, on the front door of the building there is a note that makes it very clear that there are no ghosts inside, which is super sus. Like where I live, there's no note about ghosts because it's just a given. We know there's no ghosts. This place uses the used car salesman approach to convincing people. Yeah, that rickety noise in the back? Oh, that's just something the car makes. It's an added feature. The residence is haunted by the ghost of a young woman who killed herself by hanging during the Communist War in China. Some say she did this because her husband was killed at war, and others say she was trying to avoid capture.
Coming in hot at number 7 on this list, the Stanley Hotel in Estes Park. If you've read or seen The Shining, you know the feeling of this often snowbound hotel. It's the location Stephen King based his Overlook Hotel upon. It may not look like the film unless you watch the 1990s made-for-TV movie version, which yeah, I don't think anyone has. I mean, just walking to your room can drain you. So one stiff drink might have you seeing ghosts, or a couple kids chanting red rum, red rum. Number 6, we're bringing you Red Onion Saloon, Skagway, Alaska. Established in 1898 as a brothel for miners during the Klondike Gold Rush, Alaska's Red Onion Saloon, it had a feature that set it apart from other bordellos. It used dolls to help run its business, always a good sign, right? Well, every day 10 dolls would be placed on the bar downstairs, each one representing one of the ladies working in the upstairs room. A customer would choose one of the dolls, at which point it would lay down on the bar to indicate that particular workers were occupied. When the customers came back downstairs, the doll would be returned to her sitting position to let other potential clients know that she was available. Well, fast forward to 2019, when the Red Onion Saloon still operates as a bar and restaurant, yet the dolls are still on display, and it offers tours of the upstairs rooms, which are preserved as sort of like a mix-shaped brothel museum. As if these dolls weren't creepy enough, there were reports of Lydia, a former madame of a brothel, haunting the site, complete with cold spots and lingering spells of perfume rafting through the walls. I mean, all creepiness aside, I'm more curious about how this place got named Red Onion. I mean, they could have came up with any other name. Well, let me know what you guys would call this in the comment section below. Give me a name.
At number 5 we have Morgan House, Kalimpong, India. The estate formerly owned by the Morgans has a rather dark past. The house was lived in by Baron George Morgan and his wife back in the 1930s. Apparently Mr. Morgan would spend a lot of his free time torturing his wife. With them being in India and his wife having nowhere to go, she eventually fell into a depression. Not long after that she died. The two never had any kids, and after Mr. Morgan died, the Indian government took control of the property. It has now been spruced up into a nice hotel, but the terrors of this building's past haven't been washed away. Mrs. Morgan is free from her husband and has no interest in leaving her home. Many patrons of the hotel say they have heard her high heels walking along the wooden floors. At number 4 we have Casa Loma, Toronto, Canada. The most famously haunted place in all of Toronto. It's literally a massive castle that is a 10-minute drive from the world famous CN Tower. It's strange having a massive stone castle built in the early 20th century so close to the downtown core, but that's probably why it's so haunted. All the ghosts want to gather there because it feels like home. One of the most haunted areas of the castle are the secret underground tunnels which connect different sections of the property. There have been reports of a ghostly miner who might have died digging the tunnels and a lady in a white dress. Also, the castle's former owner, Lady Mary Pellet, has been seen all throughout the building. Some people say they've tried to take a picture of her when she's walking through, and she will use her ghostly powers to turn off your camera. Sounds like she's not very photogenic. If you want to give yourself an extra fright, you should come check out the castle in October when they turn the whole thing into a massive haunted house. I've been, it's a great time. At number 3 we have the Hill of Crosses in Lithuania. The look of this place will make you say, oh yeah, there are for sure some ghosts in here. This hill has been the site of rebellion, respect, and remembering the dead for the past 500 years. People have come here to place crosses as a way to pay good fortune to those who died fighting for the freedom of Lithuania. This practice has made it a safe haven for spirits to walk through, and there have been reports of seances performed there trying to contact these dead heroes. There are currently over 100,000 crosses piled up on this hill. Back in the Soviet reign, they tried to destroy this holy landmark 3 times. Three times. But the Lithuanian people stood strong and came back to rebuild it every time. That's a pretty awesome story of solidarity. I know why ghosts want to hang out here. They're like, I know my home will be safe forever. At number 2 we have Cemetery number 1 in New Orleans, USA. This place has been nicknamed the Haunted City because it is literally filled with so many graves that you could fill a small theater. There are over 700 graves at this site. You pack that many people into one spot and you are guaranteed some strange spirits walking around. On Halloween it must be like a massive party in there. It would be a giant ghost rave with the coolest people from the last 200 years. The grave that gets the most attention is that of former voodoo priestess Marie Laveau. It said she had the power to influence spirits, and now even in death her ghost can gain strength from the graveyard and get the phantoms to do her bidding. I mean, that's a good skill to have after you're dead. You're like, oh you guys, you work for me, that's how this is gonna work. And for the number 1 spot we have the Rose Hall in Montego Bay, Jamaica. A beautiful mansion that used to be the home of the Palmers back in the 19th century. The two were a loving couple, or that's what the public thought. Mr. Palmer died one day of suspicious causes, but foul play was inconclusive. Annie Palmer took control of the property, and people weren't too suspicious until her 2 following husbands and her parents died, all without warning. Now things are getting a little suspicious. The urban legend of Annie Palmer is that she was a witch and she would use dark magic to kill her victims. It's said that her evil spirit still inhabits the Rose Hall. A witch ghost sounds pretty serious, especially one that has killed people. That's not something you want to disturb for your own entertainment, right? Well, you totally can. You can take tours of the building which highlight all the legends surrounding the witch of the Rose Hall. And if you really want to bring some bad mojo into your life, you can take part in a seance to communicate with the spirit of Annie Palmer. I think the ghost of a murderous witch isn't something I would want to hang out with.
Starting us off at number 10 is the Repeat. This one was shared by Reddit user I Am Here to Say This, who said they lived in an old home for 5 years. The user's stepdad had known the man who lived in the house before them, and also that he had hung himself in the attic. Not really thinking anything of the story, the user just continued on life as usual. But 1 month into living at the house, he started hearing footsteps in the attic. And it wasn't just once. Like clockwork, every night at 3 AM he would hear footsteps pacing around in the attic. The steps were at a normal speed, but they were heavy. It kind of sounded like a man was thinking about something. After the footsteps, the user would hear a chair falling on the ground and then absolutely nothing. And I feel like a lot of the time when people hang themselves, they use a chair to stand on and then tie themselves to whatever they need to above and then knock the chair out of reach. So I don't want to say the ghost of this man was redoing his suicide every night, but I'm also not saying that. And I haven't had breakfast and I woke up late. Coming in at number 9 are the Doppelgangers Part 1. This one's from Reddit user 1LT Obvious, who is sure his family home was haunted by doppelgangers, and here's why. He recalled one time as a teenager when he was on MSN with his girlfriend with the webcam on. Do you guys remember the days when you'd like nudge people and play games on MSN? Either way, in the view you could see the user, his bedroom door behind him, the stairs going upstairs on the left, and the living room on the right. Now usually his little sister would fall asleep watching TV and then go to bed at some point in the night. At one point while they were messaging, the user saw his sister leave the living room to go upstairs, but she didn't make any sound, which he found really odd. They lived in an old house, so it would creak really loudly every time anyone went anywhere. He went to the living room to check and his sister was there still sleeping, so alarm bells started going off. He then goes and sits back down and asks his girlfriend if she saw anything on the camera, and she was like, yeah, I saw your sister go upstairs. But my sister's sleeping on the couch, so who the hell just went upstairs? Do you guys see why I'm always on high alert? What is going on? At number 8, we have the Doppelgangers Part 2. From the same user, he shared another story involving his own ghostly doppelganger. There was one afternoon where his whole family was getting ready to go somewhere and he was already sitting in the car with his mom. They were waiting for his little sister, and when she finally got into the car, she looked at him and was like, what the hell? Confused, the user asked her what was wrong, and she replied saying she thought he was still inside because before she left, she yelled saying we're leaving, and she got a reply from him upstairs saying, okay, I'll be down in a minute. When really, he was in the car the whole time. No one else was in the house, yet his voice answered her. Nervous laughter. Moving house. Lol.
Coming in hot at number 7 on this list, the Old Inaki Tunnel in the spot of a gruesome murder, and it's located deep within the mountains of Fukuoka. In December of 1988, the charred remains of a man aged 20 years old was found within this mountain's tunnel. The perpetrators of this gruesome act were reported to be a group of teenage boys. The area also has a history that goes back over 1,000 years as a training ground for the esoteric Buddhist practitioners who claim the area to be a spiritual hotspot of lost souls. These claims were later backed by modern spiritualists who visited the mountains area in the aim of recording a television special, but promptly refused to go further due to the foreboding spiritual atmosphere. The tunnel itself has been sealed off with concrete blocks, but an opening in the top of the tunnel still allows entry for anyone foolish enough to climb down. Well, this tunnel is no longer in use, and it's far off from a beaten path, meaning no assistance would be able to reach you if you were in an emergency situation. Number 6, we're bringing you one of the Bonin Islands in the Pacific Ocean, far south of the Japanese mainland. Iwo Jima Island has forever been ingrained in the culture consciousness as a historic battlefield in World War II. However, its significance doesn't stop there, as it was the home to Mount Surbachi, a 161 meter high volcano, and it's been listed as one of the most dangerous active volcano in the world according to the University of Manchester. It is said that there is a chance of this volcano erupting sometime in the next 100 years, which would in turn lead to huge 25-meter high tsunami waves hitting the coast of both China and Japan, leading to a potential death toll in the millions. The ghost stories of Iwo Jima are not surprisingly related to the 40-day battle waged on the island, in which many thousands of soldiers on both the US and the Japanese side lost their lives. Okay, we're halfway there. Number 5, we've got Okikiwa, well, the Shrieking Banshee. Within the Himeji Castle is an old well with a very intriguing tale of love and tragedy. It is one of the most haunted places in Japan, as it's where a ghost appears at night and screams. The ghost is the spirit of Okiku, a young girl who served the samurai Aoyama Tessen. Aoyama loved Akiku, but his love was not reciprocated in what can be termed as harassment today. He hid a valuable article and blamed it on Okiku. He offered not to punish her if she became his lover, but Akiku wasn't gonna have any of it. She refused to accept it. In a fit of rage, Aoyama threw her in the well, killing her. This is why she can still be heard wailing in silence of the night, just screaming over and over again in the well.
Coming in at number 4, we have Herrera Mansion, Quezon. Now we're moving to a place that has a couple of famous ghosts. It's one thing to have a haunted attraction that has some voices and screams coming out of it, or has stories of people feeling cold spots, but actually seeing the same ghost over and over, that's something you can sell tickets to. Apparently there is a ghost of a Japanese soldier that will wander the property. He sometimes yells out or vanishes and then reappears in an instant. I mean, that's kind of spooky, but I've got a little added bonus that will make the whole thing a lot spookier. The ghost is headless. Yeah, that's exactly what you need to give this place a little extra spooky vibe. Now, even though our headless soldier is the star of the show, there's another set of ghosts that have been seen quite often. There's a ghost couple that has been seen walking around hand in hand around the building. It's thought that they could be the original owners of the building. Coming in at number 3, we have Balete Drive, one of the most famous kinds of hauntings you can have, the Lady in White. There's a house on Balete Drive that is apparently home to a lady in white. She loves to watch people as they walk by and apparently doesn't like men very much. This could be because it's suspected that she was killed killed by Japanese soldiers. If you're a man driving by the lady in white's home, she might use her supernatural powers to teleport into your backseat, and when you look into your rearview mirror, you will see her staring back at you with her body drenched in blood. Hopefully she doesn't leave a blood stain on the new leather. Coming in number 2, we have Diplomat Hotel by Guyo. It's safe to say that the events that took place at the Diplomat Hotel were not very diplomatic. I would describe them as horrific and unnecessary, but that's just me. This hotel was a hotspot for executions. This is a place where many nuns and priests were rounded up in an attempt to destroy Catholicism in the Philippines. These nuns and priests were executed in front of everyone, and their heads were then kicked down the steps. Major disrespect on so many levels. Well, when you cut off the heads of that many people, then you're going to anger some ghosts. There's a ton of spirits that call this place home, and many of them are headless. There's so many headless ghosts at this place they don't even have one superstar. They all work together as one major attraction. Coming in at the number 1 spot, we have Ilolio. Let's step away from ghosts for a little while and check out something else supernatural that is haunting the island of Ilolio. Turns out there is something way scarier than a vampire in the Philippines. If you thought that the headless ghosts were bad, then this thing is going to make you wish you were surrounded by them. This area in the Philippines is apparently home to the Tik-Tik. It patrols the land and should be something that you try to avoid at all costs. The Tik-Tik is described as a large bird or a bat and will stalk people as they walk in the dark and sneak up on them, and then use its long tongue to start drinking their blood. But that's where its terrifying traits just start. Apparently this creature likes the taste of unborn children. It will find a woman who's pregnant and wait for her to go to sleep. Then it will use its long tongue to pierce the woman's stomach, but do it in such a way where she doesn't wake up. And while she is asleep, the Tik-Tik will eat her baby. That sounds horrific. Thankfully, a simple amulet that has been blessed with some holy water will keep this creature at bay. At number 10, we have Salem, Massachusetts, USA. A town revered by the occult and has a dark enough history to make any horror fan squeal with glee. Salem, Massachusetts was the home of the 1692 Salem witch trials. This is where a massive witch hunt led to the hanging of 19 people who were falsely accused of using witchcraft. There are several spots around the town that give off an extremely creepy vibe and have reported hauntings, but the most notorious place is the former home of Sheriff George Corwin. He was the man responsible for spearheading the hunting and capturing of these witches. Not only that, but the people that were captured, he would take them into his basement and then he would torture these people until they confessed to their crimes. Now his ghost and the ghosts of several other people who were tortured by him haunt the Joshua Ward House, which is the building that sits on the land that the sheriff's house used to be on.
Number 9, Eastern State Penitentiary, Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. The castle-like Eastern State Penitentiary took solitary confinement to whole new levels when it was built in 1829. Prisoners lived alone, exercised alone, and ate alone. When inmates were left in a cell, a guard would cover his head with a hood so he wouldn't be seen. The prison had to abandon its solitary confinement system due to overcrowding from 1913 until it was closed in 1970. Although the forms of punishment did not get any less severe, chaining an inmate's tongue to his wrists, that's just one example, a true story. The site's one of most haunted places in America right now. Well, it welcomes thousands of visitors every year, both for its museums and annual Terror Behind the Wall celebration, which features 6 haunted attractions within the prison walls for Halloween. When you talk about an attraction inside of a prison, no thanks. Well, it was reported paranormal happenings have included dismembered laughter, shadowy figures, and pacing of footsteps. Sorry, I thought I was hearing footsteps behind me right now. Okay, I'm pretty freaked out with this one, so let's move on to the next one.
Coming in number 8, we have Melinta Tunnel, Corregidor. I'm giving you back-to-back hospitals on this one. Why? Because they're a hot spot for ghosts, you silly goose. And just so we're clear, this was a tunnel that was turned into a hospital. Well, not so much a hospital, but a sick bay for injured American troops. And as you can imagine, there has been a lot of people who have died there. The area is now famous for ghostly figures walking around at night. They probably don't even know that they're dead, so it's safe to say that this tunnel isn't somewhere you want to get stuck after the sun goes down. Coming in at number 7, we have Manila City Hall. You know your country has some good spooky stuff when the city hall is infested with ghosts. That's cool as hell. Well, apparently this place is packed with ghosts and they show up like clockwork. As soon as the sun starts going down, spooky stuff will start to pop up all over the building. You get all the standard ghost stuff going on here. People say there's footsteps coming from floors that have no people on them. You can hear whispering coming out of thin air. There's even reports of doors bursting open randomly. If you're going to be a ghost, you could at least be polite and not slam any of the doors doors. Thank you very much. Coming in at number 6, we have Mount Maja-Az. This island is haunted by a ton of stuff that is outside the world of ghosts, but is still very supernatural. Apparently this place has everything mystical going on over there. There have been reports of dwarves and elves on the island that are apparently really nice. If you come to the island with good intentions, then they will bless you with good luck. But if you come over there with some bad vibes, they will send you a ton of bad mojo that will ruin your whole life. Now there is something over there that is pretty creepy and would keep me away from this island, even though they're supposed to be good luck giving dwarves. Apparently this place is also home to some vampires that roam the island looking for new victims to suck the life out of. Yeah, that doesn't sound like a hot vacation spot for me. Coming in number 5, we have Baja Nepula San Ildefonso Bulacan. This is another place that the Japanese used as a garrison while they were waging war. And I don't know if you know this about the Japanese, but even though they seem cute and cuddly now, they weren't always like that. The Japanese used to be brutal. They would try to completely eradicate other cultures, and they saw themselves as the superior Asian race. All others were disposable, and the way they treated the Filipino people was horrible. At Baja Nepula, many people were beaten, tortured, and even the place has such a horrible history that the building has been abandoned ever since, and no one will go close to it. It's said that it has a horrible curse on it.
Number 4, Lizzie Borden Bed and Breakfast in Fall River. So this location came up on nearly every search on our quest to find this top 10 list for you guys. Well, you've likely heard of the children's rhyme, Lizzie Borden took an axe, gave it to her mother 40 whacks. When she saw what she had done, she gave her father 41. Well, you can not only visit the scene of that famous 1892 double homicide, you can also sleep at the Borden's home, eat their last meal, Johnny cakes, a thick cornmeal pancakes and eggs, in case you were wondering, and spend the last nights in the bedroom where the bodies of Lizzie's stepmother Abigail was found. Someone who stayed there said, "I can attest, this home painstakingly furnished to look exactly as it did on the morning of the murders. Well, that will creep you right out." Better though, the 175-year-old property hosts up to 20 overnight guests, in which some of them, for some reason, it's a tradition when you go to this place, they will actually whip out a Ouija board. I mean, I'm not down for Ouija. That is a real life situation that can happen, and let alone whipping out a Ouija board in a haunted place. And next up, number 3 on this list of places that you should not visit. And we're talking about Zoshigaya Cemetery, in a place where people are unwilling to visit at any point of the day. Some people have claimed to witness faces and white hands appearing from the trees. 3 people have committed suicide at this place, and it is believed that their souls remain there and they terrify lone wanderers. Zoshigaya Cemetery is counted in as one of the most haunted places in Tokyo. Number 2, we have the Labyrinth, the Scary Hospital. If you're looking for a haunted house attraction in Japan, but you want something more exciting than the Houston Bosch, then head to Fuji-Q Highland Theme Park. The haunted house at the theme park is one of the best in the country and will truly leave you shook. The house is based on a hospital theme, and it is inspired by a real hospital at the base of Mount Fuji, where a hospital harvested body organs and they take it from unwitting patients. It is said that these patients come back to haunt the doctors, and it is in the presence of the labyrinth. It's 900 meters of pure gore, horror, and tricks that will leave you wondering if this is just an attraction or if this house is really haunted. I'll leave that one up to you guys. Number 1 on this list, we're talking about Aokigahara Forest, in infamous both inside Japan and internationally. This place receives the moniker of Suicide Forest due to abnormally high numbers of suicide confirmed within. Furthermore, this forest is supposedly the second most popular place in the world to commit suicide in, only surpassed by the Golden Gate Bridge, which is absolutely insane. Didn't know that fact until doing the research for this video. The popularity of the forest as a suicide spot has led to signs urging those who enter to reconsider and to seek help. Suicides here are so frequent, in fact, that police and volunteers conduct monthly searches for bodies that have chosen the forest for their final moments. Despite their best efforts to find and remove the remains, the chance of encountering a corpse, on a hike is very likely. Within 35 square kilometers of wilderness at northwest base of Mount Fuji, the area is undoubtedly a beautiful landscape, but it has been proven to be the final stop to many souls.